Hi, everybody. Today I'm joined by Ashida Kim. My name is Ralph Meter. I'm the programmer of the SRC4U software. And why I brought Grandmaster Kim on board is he is with Grandmaster David together the author of the books for practical Qigong training. And so for to start and let people a little bit know about you, how did you get together with Grandmaster David, and what brought up the idea of creating these books?
I met Grandmaster David back in the '90s. Actually, uh, he was had a kung fu school in Polk City, and he had been read some of my books in the past, and he got in touch with me on email, and we decided to get together and have dinner. And so we met at a local restaurant and had a chat. And I was very interested in the things that he was doing because they were a lot of chi techniques or techniques that most people don't really get into very much in the martial arts because they're energy techniques and they require a lot of training. So I started going up and visiting him at his clinic and his school that he had, and the over a period of time we developed a series of techniques that we could share with other people that involved healing aspects of what he was doing, because he was also, in addition to having his martial arts academy, he also had a clinic operating at that time. And so, very much with the intention of helping people learn how to help themselves, we put together this program in the '90s for it, which we decided would be very beneficial in the 21st century. So we decided to call it 21st Century Qi Gong Therapy. And the uh, principles of the Qigong system all rely on collecting and cultivating and circulating Qi, which is the Chinese word for the electromagnetic life energy that is surrounds everything and flows through everything and around everything. And this is a type of vibration because all of the nine laws of the universe, the second law is that all things are in vibration. And by collecting and cultivating this energy, you can create a certain vibration that can bring about harmony and uh, undo imbalances and be very helpful and beneficial to the health of the individual. So the principal technique of this is essentially to bring energy to your hands. And once you do that, then you can begin to cultivate that energy within yourself. And then you can begin to create that energy and circulate it not only within your own system, but within the acupuncture meridians and the psychic channels that make up the physical body of most people. So it's a very simple system to begin with, but it becomes very complicated because in the later stages, you can actually use techniques to mend bones and to draw off fever and things like that. Uh, so we developed this program with the idea of being 12 different parts, each one having a different technique that would enable the student to advance through a series of steps that would enable them to develop the techniques that they needed and the skills that needed, understanding of the techniques that they needed, so that they could employ these techniques to help other people. Uh, Qigong is a type of uh, breathing exercise, and by doing these breathing exercises, you develop long, slow, deep breaths. Uh, don't want to ramble on too much, but it basically with the in Chinese medicine, everything is based on the five elements. There are five types of breathing techniques. Each one is associated with a particular one of the five elements. So for instance, if you want to breathe the breath of fire, which is also found in Hatha Yoga, you breathe really fast in and out. And what this does is this cools your body because it creates it changes the pH of your blood by changing the number of uh, oxygen molecules that are in your bloodstream. So if you want to warm yourself up, you breathe really slow breaths, very a short breath in and a very slow breath out, because that creates an oxygen deficit, puts more carbon dioxide in your system, and it warms your body up. When you're in cold weather, for example, the when you tend to normally breathe more shallow, and this is a natural thing that happens. If you understand these different principles, then you can alter the pH of your blood, and you can change the your temperature of your body, and also help to clear out any imbalances or blockages that might have developed in some of the different channels that make up the physical and the spiritual body. So Grandmaster David wanted to make these techniques very simple, and so the beginning technique is basically to draw energy to your hands. Later on, through through the different series of steps that you go through, you learn enough about the Chinese medicine system that you can then use the more advanced techniques so that you can do more advanced skills. But the idea was to give as many people as possible the simplest technique that they could do that would help them the most. And that was the beginning of all the rest of them, because if they wanted to go on further than they could, each one of these 12 levels has a degree of certification that comes with it. And there's a very large certificate that comes at the end of the course if you complete all 12 levels. So if you wanted to have a yoga studio, for instance, that was offering Qigong as a service, or Qigong therapy as a service, you could display these certificates and show that you had gone through these 12 steps of certification and learned these techniques. They said the more advanced techniques take a lot of understanding, so you have to learn the different steps that are intermediate, so that when you get to the higher levels, you understand that when we say move down this meridian, you know where the meridian is. And you also know whether to be breathing in or out when you're doing these type of techniques, because all these things are tiny little parts that go together to make a very powerful technique. And so that's essentially his goal at that time, and we tied in together on that, because we like to try to do things to help people, because martial arts is not just a matter of fighting and kicking and punching and combat all the time. It makes you a better person, because you understand a lot about how things work, and you develop a certain confidence and a certain knowledge and certain skill sets that enable you to set a good example for other people. So when you do that, you develop a certain reverence for life and for other people, and a certain empathy, and you try to not hurt people if you can help it, because most of them are just misled or misunderstood. And so if you can help them to be better, then it's much better than having to hurt them to make them change, which often is the case. A lot of times when you're in martial arts, you find people that want to be stopped. They want somebody to show them where the boundaries are, so they stop being rude and stop being a bully. And very often you do that. But if you can do it without having to wrestle with them, without having to hit them, without having to hurt them physically, and then heal it, then so much the better. So a good example of why we did this sort of thing was that Grandmaster David had a student that did not believe that the energy work and the Qi Gong and the death touch techniques that you learn in martial arts were real. And so he wanted to see an example. And so Grandmaster David applied a technique to him and said, when you're ready, come in and I'll rebalance your system for you. And so he didn't see him for 2 or 3 hours. And when he did see him, he finally staggered in, and his face was almost black and his lips were blue, and he was starting to pass out. And Grandmaster David asked him, why didn't you come to see me sooner? And he said, well, I've been throwing up all this time. And so he did a few techniques, pressed a few points, and did a little breathing exercise and balanced him back out. And within 5 or 10 minutes, he had him back to normal. And these things can be done either to harm or to help. And it's much better to help people than it is to harm them. And so this was, we said, the goal that we had set, to try to give people the ability to help each other as much as possible by doing these basic techniques that that would be beneficial. So
which brings me to the point. From what I gather is you only become a grandmaster if you know the art of healing as well. Because in your dojo where you train people, you will have injuries. People do dumb things. You have to be able to fix them up. That as well explains why most of the so-called doctors in the ancient Chinese tradition had been martial arts trained.
exactly, one of the most famous martial artists in China was Houjinwa, and there've been more movies made about him than any other martial artist in China, because he's one of the most fantastic martial artists that they had in the period when the boxers basically were the law and order for the nation. And he was a doctor. He was a doctor first, and then he was a martial artist.
Right,
So it was, and he I believe he had three sons that he also taught martial arts to. But he was a very famous Chinese martial artist, and also a great herbalist and physician, and was known more for that than he was for his fighting skills. Which is, of course, if you're a bully, people don't like to see you coming. But if you always make people feel good when you're there and you help them to be better, then they welcome you. And it's much nicer to be welcomed than it is to be feared. So,
right, right. And just for our viewers which don't know about Ashida Kim, Ashida is a title and it belongs to, or let's do it this way, it's like the grandmaster of the ninja uh, arts of fight. So a ninja is more or less the most deadly weapon which is running around on the planet, and Ashida Kim is one of them. But when you see him in person, uh, yeah, you would say he cannot harm a fly because he is not very tall, he is very slender, and he has fought in his past heavyweights and did win. So, uh, just to give a little background, what I want to do first is I want to show you the part or the website of Ashida Kim, and it's called Dojo Press, and there are a lot of books as well, some videos which you can get there. But we are interested mainly in the Shun Tao, which is Grandmaster David's Qi Gong, and you see there are TV series and so on and so on. And you click on 21st century Qi Gong, and it will bring you to the books we are addressing today. So there are the 12 individual parts which you can get individually, or there is a combined book which comes either in print or as an ebook. The first one is showing you the mudras and how this energy gets gathered. The second one is preparing you for the test to achieve to make it perfect in your mudra you are studying. Uh, Towards that, uh, there is an additional thing which we haven't mentioned yet. When you pass all 12 exams, you are actually getting uh, the first black belt in Qigong. Is this true?
yes, so this was something that we developed as a way of uh, letting everybody know that the level of skill that the people had who had taken this particular course. And we used the ranking system that's used by most martial arts, which is the black belt or different colored belt system. We don't give out the individual belts yellow and green and brown like the or intermediate belts that they have in most martial arts schools, because most of the people that take this course take it by mail or take it over the internet. And so there's no attendance, and so there's no need to wear a particular uniform or wear a particular belt. At the end of the course, when you've taken all 12 levels, you do get what we have determined as or kind of what we call a black belt equivalency, which means that you know enough about this that you can hold your own with black belts from many other systems. For instance, in judo, they teach a system of resuscitation called Kwatsu, which is basically when you knock out your opponent in judo accidentally or on purpose with a choke or stranglehold, you have to be able to revive them. And so judo has a system of 27 resuscitation techniques that are used to restore consciousness to someone who's been knocked out or had the wind knocked out of them or other injuries that you normally receive in a judo class, dislocated shoulders and things like this. So this course is more advanced than that particular course is. Because you only learn that particular system when you're studying judo. This one is a much higher level course because it deals with energy work. And so it essentially teaches you how to become empathic with the person that you want to help, and then to help restore balance to their system. The basic technique for this, as we've been saying all along, is the fireball technique. And this is a method of bringing energy to your hands. The trick to doing the
Okay,
fireball technique, go ahead.
1 second. Before you continue, I will bring this up on screen.
Okay.
And so people can see what we are talking about. And that's the first part of the 12 lessons. It's the fireball.
Right,
It's a nice picture displaying this. And so the warming power, it's called.
right. Now,
So go ahead.
in Chinese medicine, there are 5 pathogens. I mean, in Western medicine, you have viruses and fungus and germs and things like this. In Chinese medicine, you have damp, cold, wind, and dryness and heat. And those are the pathogens that you have to deal with. And those can cause blockages in the meridians in the body and cause imbalance and illness. So by removing these blockages, you can enable the energy to flow more smoothly, and then everything, you'll be healthy and have a long and prosperous life. The fireball, as we demonstrate here, is a method of holding energy between your hands. Now, the trick to doing this is the half lotus palm. And this is a Chinese technique that is taught in several martial arts systems. And it's not widely known in a lot of these systems, because a lot of these systems don't teach the advanced levels until you get very far advanced in the system, and therefore very few people are aware of them. But the half lotus palm was made by putting the middle 2 fingers together and letting the little finger and the index finger be extended. Now, it's not a matter of stretching these things out or having your thumb go flying out on the side or anything like this. Okay, then what you're going to have all this is just relaxed. Okay, but your middle 2 fingers are together. Now, the position for doing this, for collecting this energy, is shown on that page 4. If you, there's the half lotus palm shown right there. Okay. Now, in order to collect this energy, which is the first part of doing these techniques, scroll back down to page 4. Okay, you have to stand in a particular position.
Oh,
Okay, down the other way.
right.
Okay. The page before that page right there. You have to stand in this particular position so that you'll be grounded, because there are 2 types of energy that you're dealing with here: yang energy from above and yin energy from below. The energy comes from the yin energy is negative energy, negatively charged energy. It's represented by the color black, and it's an energy from the center of the earth, which has an electromagnetic core, rises from the earth and goes toward the sun. Then when it gets to the sun, it reverses polarity and it becomes yang energy, and it flows from the sun back down to the earth. And this is the cycle of energy that is the great heavenly cycle of energy of yin and yang between the sun and the planet. So in order to not unbalance yourself when you're doing these exercises, you learn how to stand in this particular position. Feet a little bit more than shoulder width apart. Okay. You want to tuck your hips like you're sitting on a horse. And in most martial arts, this particular position is known as the horse riding stance. Then this will put a little bit of stress on your hips and a little bit of stress on your knees, but it's not uncomfortable after a while. And you don't have to stand here for very long. It's just to get started. So then you make the half lotus palm with each hand. You hold your hands at about solar plexus level. And you begin to try to feel the energy between your hands. Now, you can simulate this energy by circling your hands, like so. Okay? And you can circle them the other way, but it creates a different charge when you circle towards yourself than it does when you circle away from yourself. When you push the circle or you circle your hands away from yourself, it brings the energy from your heart chakra and your lower Tiantian energy cycles, circles, chakras in your body, down through your arms to your hands. When you bring your hands back towards yourself, it makes that energy flow back into your body. So you want to bring the energy to your hands by circling outward. So when you do this, after a while, you begin to feel your hands begin to tingle. And this is the energy beginning to become charged on your hands and to electrify your hands with Qi energy. So in some martial arts schools, they'll tell you, especially when you're doing techniques to teach you how to do like the Tibetan burning palm, where you can break bricks with your bare hands and this kind of thing, they'll tell you to feel your hands are heavy. Okay? You don't want to really feel your hands being heavy in this particular technique. You want to feel them tingling. Okay. Eventually they'll be warm, and that's what you're shooting for, because this is the fireball technique. This is the first one you have to learn. So if you want to feel what they're going to feel like, if you hold your hands up over your head for a couple of minutes, just shake your hands like this, and do that for maybe 30, 40 seconds, and then bring your hands down about the solar plexus level, you'll feel your hands start to tingle, because when you hold your hands up, the blood flows out of your hands. And when you bring your hands back down, you can feel the blood flowing back into your hands. And that's what the tingle that you want to feel when you're doing this circling motion. It's that same sort of charge. Now, you don't want to make too big a circle. You want to make a small ball, okay, about the size of a large grapefruit. Okay. So you're circling your hands like this, and eventually you begin to feel the energy between your hands. And then you just can hold your hands together, and you can feel the energy between them. Now you have the fireball. Okay. Now, if you separate your hands, the fireball will dissipate. So you have to hold your hands in proximity until you feel the energy between them. Okay. Now, the next exercise, if you scroll up to the next couple of pages where you're bringing this into your Tiantian, the lower Tiantian, we'll do this part next, let's keep going. Okay. The lower Tiantian is 2 inches below your navel.
Further down?
Yeah, further down.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Okay, right there. Okay. And this is an area of that is very important in Chinese medicine, because in Chinese medicine it said that if this area of the lower Tiantian is warm, then the body will be healthy, because this indicates that you have good digestion. And good digestion was very important in olden times when you didn't have antibiotics and you didn't have laxatives and things that would stop diarrhea. So you had to have techniques like this to control these things. So you've got this ball of energy. You bring it down over your Tiantian. You can bring this to anyone that you want, but you usually start with the lowest Tiantian, because that's the easiest one to charge up. You bring it down as shown in the picture. You gradually ease this energy into your body by slowly pushing your hands in. You're not quite touching your body when you get close enough. You keep your hands about an inch away from your body, but you can still feel your hands tingling, and pretty soon you begin to feel this lower abdomen area become warm. And when it becomes warm, then you're charging it up with this electromagnetic energy that you collected between your hands. And now you've circulated it within your body. This is the first place to start. And then from here, there's also a heart chakra that you have to stimulate, and also a cranial chakra that you have to stimulate to get the energy flowing through the meridians of your body. The 12 acupuncture meridians create the physical body so that you can operate on the temporal plane. And within the body, there are 8 psychic channels that are the deep rivers of this energy. And those create the body of light so that you can operate on the astral plane. So these things will all be revealed as you go through the course. But to begin with, you have to begin by starting in the lower Tian and letting this energy be absorbed. Now, eventually, you're going to ease your hands away from your body. When you do that, you're going to still feel them tingling a little bit. Now, you can get rid of this extra energy that's charged on your hands and return your hands to a normal charge, basically, by rubbing your hands together, okay, and then doing like this to sling it off. Now, yeah, right down there. That's good. Now, when there's another way, there are other ways of getting rid of this energy off of your hands. The main thing is you want to wipe this energy away from your body so that you don't end up with your hands feeling hot all day or this kind of thing. Because sometimes they will tingle for a while after you do a particular therapy on yourself or somebody else. So the way to do this is to relax your hands and just let them hang from the wrist and then throw them to the side, just as you were slinging water off your hands. Now, another way of doing this is to slap your hand on the palm on a flat surface, like a board or a floor. When you do this, it splatters this extra energy off of your hands, just as if you were slapping water off of your hand. Another way of doing this is to put your hands in water, because the water will dispel the extra electricity, electromagnetic charge, and bring your hands back to a normal level. Okay. So all of these things will happen because if you do this a lot, if you do it too much at first, your hands will feel hot, and you'll have to be able to dispel this energy. Because when your hands feel hot at this level, you're not ready to start projecting it onto things yet. You're still learning how to control them. So if your hands get red, okay, stop doing the exercise and let your hands calm back down to normal. Okay. Now this, once you've done this, you have this, you've learned how to develop this energy ball. You've learned how to transmit it into your system to make yourself healthy and have a long life. Okay. The next thing you think of is, what can I do with this besides break bricks with my bare hands? Well, what you can do with this is you can help other people who are having difficulty to get over that difficulty. For example, one time when I went to the mechanic because my vehicle was in bad repair and needed something done with it. And the mechanic that I took it to gave me a ride home. And I noticed that he was breathing labored. He has labored breathing as we were driving along. And I asked him if anything was wrong, and he said he had hurt his shoulder the day before, and it was starting to get really stiff on him. And he was very uncomfortable with that arm at that particular time. Later on in the day, when I picked up the car, I asked him how his shoulder was feeling. And he said that it was terrible. He couldn't lift his arm up even perpendicular and could hardly lift it at all. The pain was starting to get up into his neck and had already gone down his side and was starting to make his ribs and his hips hurt on the left side. So I heard myself saying, let me fix that for you. And this is how it works sometimes when you're doing this and you've learned to use these techniques. You just know what to do. And so he said, all right. Because the reason he said all right is because you have to get permission to help people. You don't want to be inflicting what you think is the right thing to do on anybody else's day or anybody else's will or anybody else's decisions. If they say, okay, give it a try, then it's worth a shot. And then you have their permission, and it's more likely to be effective than it is if you force your treatment on somebody, which is not really a good thing to do ethically or any other way. So I created the fireball between my hands, and I stood beside him, and I put my hands around his shoulder. I didn't touch his shoulder. I just put my hands on one on each side. You'll see this technique. Yeah, right. There's a good technique right there. So all I did was I didn't visualize a little sunspot there, which you see. This is particularly for illustrative purposes. But I put my hands on either side of his shoulder like that, and I just held him there for a minute until I felt my hands tingling, and then I gradually eased my hands down his arm, which is also shown later on in pictures. This is a good technique to demonstrate. And as I got my hand down his arm, pulled it off the end of his fingertips, then I wiped the water off my hands. And I did this 3 times. Okay? And then I told him that should feel better in a few minutes. And sure enough, a couple of minutes later, he began to remark that his arm wasn't hurting anymore. And he began to move his arm around. He began to lift his arm up and hold his arm over his head. And he said, I'm healed. He said, what do you call that? And I told him it's a gift because it's not something that I can easily do whenever I want. It's just I know in certain cases what to do. Grandmaster David has studied these things a lot more than myself, and he does these things professionally to help other people. So mine is a small part of my martial art. His is a large part of his martial art, and that's why we put this together, was to give some people some insight into the depths and the levels that you could go to in martial arts. So the idea then of using these techniques is to project the fireball between your hands and put the injured area or the affected area. In cases like this, pain is a very good thing to work with. If someone has a bad shoulder in this case, or their elbow is hurting, even fingers, if their fingers are jammed and this kind of thing, you can put your hands around these areas and put those areas inside the fireball that's between your hands. And then you can use that energy to restore the balance to that part of the body so that it doesn't hurt anymore. So, as I said later on, in the more advanced techniques, you can actually mend broken bones and reposition fingers that are dislocated and this kind of thing, just without touching them at all. It's just a matter of knowing how to do the techniques, but that takes a lot more practice. Now, this particular technique, the fireball technique, is used primarily for damp and cold and wind sorts of difficulties. The next technique in the series, which is the diamond technique, which you make by forming your hands into a diamond like this. This is a drawing technique. Okay, the fireball is a yang technique because it is a linear, warming, yang energy technique. The diamond is a yin technique. The yin technique means that this, instead of putting something into the body, you're going to use the diamond to pull something out of the body. The diamond technique is most often used for imbalances involving heat or dryness. So we go into that in the second series of books, or second book in the series. And the fireball is the main one you need to work on now because that's the one that's going to enable you to do the most good for the most people with the least amount of training. So that if you see someone that's hurt and you feel that you can help, that's what you want to go with because that's how this works. This is a lot of intuition and a lot of just deep empathic understanding that enables you to know who you can help and be able to do it. No one likes to see anybody in distress. And the third technique in the series is the emotional clearing. It's the Qi Gong technique from Shun Tao, and it's an emotional clearing technique because every illness has physical components and spiritual components and energy components. And in Chinese medicine, you have to treat all three of these at the same time to be truly effective. Now, if you're treating a basic symptom, if you treat it long enough and you treat the symptom itself, eventually it will go away. But if you can treat all three parts of that symptom at one time with Qigong energy, then you can heal it once at one particular sitting, rather than having to go through a long series of exercises. Some of the other things that are developed in this particular series of techniques is there are exercises that teach you how to circulate energy within your body through the 12 meridians and this sort of thing, to ensure your own good health and longevity. Part of this, when you're doing these things, that has to be remembered is to not give the other person your energy. Your energy is in your tian. It's in your lower, upper, and middle tians of your body. You don't want to project energy from your system into the other person, partially because there's thousands of different frequencies involved, but also because if you do that, it will drain you. You will have no energy left at the end of the day or at the end of the treatment. What you want to do is you want to let the other person take advantage of the energy that's between your hands And if you can, you want to stimulate their energy and circulate that rather than using the energy in your fireball, which is a more advanced level of doing these techniques.
Well,
So,
I really looking forward to the next levels we will be going through. Uh, uh, just to recap, one thing which I think we need to point out, if you want to help somebody, you rotate away from you.
right,
If
that
you want
draws the
to
energy.
energize yourself, you rotate towards you.
Exactly, exactly.
So this
Moving,
is probably the most crucial part to remember out of this demonstration today.
right. Well, like I said, working it away from yourself is what brings the energy to your hands. And so that's the, you know, and once again, just as there's certain breathing exercises in yoga, for instance, that sun and moon breath in yoga, where you close off one nostril back and forth, that you shouldn't do if you have epilepsy because it will cause you to have a seizure. The same sort of thing applies with this. If you get your hands too hot, okay, and like I said, your hands turn red and start to feel too warm, okay, use one of these techniques like splattering it or putting your hands in cold water. Don't circle back this way, okay, to make it come back into your body because it's overcharged and you will overcharge yourself if you do that. Okay. If you feel weak, you bring the energy towards yourself. But don't let your overcharged hands by doing this, don't draw that back into yourself because it'll be too much energy and it'll make you feel unbalanced. And so it's like I said, there are a lot of these things that have little unknown parts to them, like the sun and moon breath. Most of the time, yoga teachers don't mention that you shouldn't do that particular breathing exercise if you have epilepsy, because very few people have epilepsy, and if they do, they usually tell you ahead of time. So it's not dangerous. And one of the reasons why I want to mention this thing about the hand technique is you don't want to get your hands too hot and then draw that heat back into yourself because it'll make you feel hot all over. So, like I said, splatter the energy on the floor, throw it in hot water, rub it off this way. Main thing is to throw it someplace where it won't contaminate anything. There was a friend of ours that was doing a seminar teaching the same sort of thing, same sort of technique, and he told everybody when you get done, dispel the energy by throwing it away. And they kept doing it. He said, "Don't throw it toward me. Throw it on the floor. Okay, don't throw it toward me because that will contaminate me with the negative energy." And so this is one of the things you have to consider when you're dealing with these things. The other one of the quick thing is don't wear jewelry when you're doing these techniques with your hands because that will interfere with the flow of energy. It's a very mild electromagnetic energy, but it is interfered with if you have like a gold ring or bracelet on, things like that. So hope I
Well,
didn't
I
make it too
think
complicated.
I think this was wonderful. And so, just to make a long story short, to everybody, this is the first part of maybe more than 12 because we might have to split certain things into two to explain the full thing over the next year. So our promise is from Ashida Kim and from me that we will create that little video series from all of the books. So the first one today was the fireball.
Right.
I hope you enjoyed it, Grandmaster Kim. It is like always a pleasure to talk to you. And thank you for helping us out to help others. And I'm looking totally forward to the next show. And we call it a day for now. And you have a wonderful time. Everybody has a blessed day, and we will see you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Enjoy.
Bye.